You better stop coming.
No, I can't do that. Because we have the whole personal. I don't know. It's that term life. If you don't use it, you lose it. So. But yeah, it's kind of a weird situation that we're in with COVID and stuff, because like my next class, I actually have a student that, or is it my programming class? I have one that sits here, he has a mask on. I'm going to start wearing a mask for that class just out of respect. But if I don't have people wearing a mask in here, I'm far enough away from most people, I shouldn't have a problem. So, and I'm vaccinated, so not that I can't get it being vaccinated, but whatever. I still have a really hard time believing that there are enough people in our world that honestly feel that the Democratic Party had enough power to create a global pandemic, killing multiple hundreds and thousands of people, maybe more, because we don't get the reports from China and Russia. So, but yeah, I mean, it's one hell of a powerful party that can't win elections. I don't know. What do I know? And every time you watch the news, no one points that out. It's like, really? You honestly believe one group has that much power that they could create a global pandemic just to spite the other political party? I don't get it. Which brings me to technology, because I had something happen.
What do you have happening?
I do a lot of stupid things on the internet. I don't like send emails to students or anything, but I look up weird things. Like right now, I'm kind of into this audiophile stuff, looking at how you get the highest quality audio, even though my old ears aren't going to hear it anyway. But it the highs are a little better, the lows are lows. It's just the way it goes. But in searching for that, I saw ham radios, and I'm like, man, I haven't seen that in a while. So I get on this bandwagon. I'm doing a little bit of research, and the number of ham radio operators is not actually going anywhere. It's been kind of steady for a long period of time, with approximately 1% growth a year for however many years, which is extremely low. How's it going?
Good.
Good. Oh, Coach is going to hear about you. So anyway, but it brought up this concept, because one of the things I was reading is that they're having a hard time getting youth to actually get into that, even though they have like groups and clubs and that. And ham radios, believe it or not, are still used for emergency purposes and stuff, right? And if they begin to not have anybody, what are we bouncing to? Are we going to the internet? By the way, ham radios can actually access the internet. Imagine that, through radio waves. What's that?
What is a ham radio?
Oh, geez. Here, let me help you. Let me help you with that. Is that thing on? Now it might be. There we go. Ham radios are...
Oh, I thought you were saying hand.
Ham. I'm bringing Q-tips next week. Anyway. Ham. My brother calls
Click images.
I'm going to. I didn't click it yet. They look like this, and what they are is they do multiple bands and frequencies.
Yeah,
and
who would want to do this?
What's that?
What youth person would want to do this?
That was so much fun.
Yeah, you're a lie.
She's like, that'd be so much fun. No one.
Do you
It's
actually
as fun
like
as
it?
watching
Is this like your
shots go
primary
through.
job?
I'm like,
No, it's a hobby that
Okay.
people do, number one. We do need people that can learn that stuff and do it professionally, and we're not getting people that do it. You do have to have a certification to use one. beyond listening, because that's actually a two-way communication. And you're potentially getting into police bands and everything else that you can listen to, and you could potentially communicate back and forth. So you might be able to say something across the airway that could actually create problems. So that's why you have to be certified, et
Are
cetera, et
those what,
cetera.
like, truckers have?
No, that's CB. And here's the thing. We know what FM is, right? Your standard radio. You know what AM is? Okay, no one listens to AM anymore, right? This is Earth. This is our atmosphere, right? This is our first layer before we get into space. AM waves bounce back and forth off of that, so it can go a lot farther. FM is more line of sight. It's not quite completely line of sight, but it's a lot more line of sight, so you don't get as much distance out of it. That's why you have to have FM towers that are a certain distance apart so they can actually see each other past the curvature of the Earth, etc. Cell phones actually are operating a lot on that same thing. That's why for the longest time you saw cell phone towers about every 50 miles. They're closer than that now because they want higher bandwidth, more connection points, etc., etc. Then you have what, VHF? It's not out here, I'm just writing it. That's V. Then you have like UHF, and there's other frequencies and stuff that are out there and how they bounce off the atmosphere and everything else. Well, an AM loses a signal over distance, but it still makes it there, so you get further distance. Ham radio can pick up the signals for basically almost around the world. Get the idea? It's a big deal. And I've never done it, but I've had neighbors that did it and stuff, and they literally had, for ham radios, they literally had a straight antenna like that going across their backyard from like their house to a tree or something. Just pick it up that way. They have handheld ones and stuff like that. But the interesting thing is if you're doing a ham radio or a handheld ham radio or something, yeah, you can get on the CB band and everything else and hear that stuff too and communicate back and forth. So anyway, it brought back the concept of, did we talk about that in this class, disruptive technology versus, yeah, see, so that brought up the idea of disruptive technology because there's a huge argument going on in the ham radio world and within their groups and that and their clubs, because there are people that feel that the next generation would be more in tune with actually communicating via some form of internet in that way where you're just communicating with random everyday people, et cetera, et cetera. And there are other people like, no, we have to maintain it at its current standard. You know, we have to maintain this group of people, and one of the reasons is because a very specific band of frequencies, you know, you have 0.030 to 60,000 or 60.00 megahertz type of thing, and that's a very specific band, and that is dedicated to amateur ham radio operators, okay? Well, if they cease to exist, then the government's going to take that and sell it off, like that radio frequency band will get sold off to commercial use, because businesses and that do use it as a form of sending data back and forth too. You know, there are multiple ways of sending data back and forth. We've talked about we talked about fiber, right? To some extent, at least I mentioned that I can't get fiber where I'm at, but also how India had a lot of fiber, and that's how they had so much speed, and that's why we tended to actually send a lot of financial data over there so they could crunch it and everything else. Then you have And I can't remember, it's basically you have a bunch of wires, and the two that are in the center, they cross over each other to the plug. That's why it's called twisted pair. Okay, but it's a regular network cable, Cat 5. I think there are more than 5 lines. I can't remember how many lines are in Cat 5. It's like 9. God, now I gotta look. Look what you guys made me do. I am not a network administrator. So 4 pairs. So 4 pairs is what, 8? Yeah, 8, and the 2 in the center cross. If you don't cross them, that's one. Remember, I said you can connect one computer to another with a straight pass cable. So instead of crossing one line, you don't cross it, and it's a straight pass through, and 2 computers can directly communicate with one another. Well, there are other forms of sending data. One is actually microwave. I've dealt with microwave before. Not the one I cook my burrito in. Okay? I'm big boned. So anyway, microwave, based on towers. Okay? It has to be line of sight. And it has to be pinpoint to have accurate, like a solid data connection. And if for any reason, we could do a target, okay, and we're going to use an arrow. If for any reason you miss this target a little bit, you're degrading your signal. The goal is that you are basically trying to hit a quarter. And I've had to help hit a quarter 5 miles away. So you have a solid connection. You know, you have satellite, right? And various things like that. Now, here's the thing. Remember how I talked about the handshake with like how I would save programs back in the day and it had that audio signal? I think I even played it for you guys. That's an audio wave, right? Well, ham radios can send audio waves all the way across the world. So why can't I use that to actually transfer data, important data? Makes sense? So that is one of the concerns that you would have. And it's not a concern that any of us would have ever thought about, but yours truly was just randomly looking up stuff. This gentleman over here, he's TikToking. He's not really TikToking. He'd be doing funny things in that, right?
Me?
Yeah. I don't know what you're watching. Watching police cams where. Yeah.
Those are fire.
What's that?
Those videos are good.
It's crazy. I saw them. They detained an FBI agent that was active duty. Put him in the back of the car, and the guy was just the FBI agent was just weird as could be. And I'm like, I wouldn't trust him in the field. He ended up going, like, they ended up taking him away in an ambulance because he claimed he got too hot in the back of the police car he was put in. Couldn't drive his car. I'm like, yeah, what do I know? I think that's just his way of getting the officer in trouble.
What was he being detained for?
He was just really odd, so they didn't believe he was actually an FBI agent.
I've seen them like that.
Yeah. It's like, you're working in the field and you're just strange. You're not answering questions directly, you know. He contacted God, I'm off on this tangent of, and I'll figure out how to turn it back into class before I'm done with this conversation. But It actually has a lot to do with this class, believe it or not. So he contacts a deputy sheriff in a town and said that he wanted to interview him, that he's there doing an investigation, that he's with the FBI. So he contacted the deputy on his personal cell phone. And the deputy got there and was asking questions like, well, how did you get my number? You know, and he says, well, I want to interview you and stuff. And he says, is it typical that you interview me just out in the, out in a parking lot and didn't go through proper channels to get a hold of me and set this interview up and that? And this guy just kept doing weird things and saying weird things. So he's like, yeah, no, I'm calling people, and he gets them, all kinds of stuff. And it's the strangest thing, because out of all the things that police officers do, what's the number one thing you would do if you knew someone was armed?
Back up.
Back up and ask them to please remove your firearm and set it on the hood of your car. But you have these problems where they're sitting there and looking at this and, so anyway, we use systems for the police department, right? However, there's not always direct communication between systems, and that creates a problem. So this person was actually on a covert operation to investigate the police for possible corrupt practices, and he wanted to interview this guy. And it's like, well, it took them like 10 phone calls, and like I can't even remember how long, because it was the full video. It's almost an hour to tell them, yeah, he's actually an active FBI agent and he is on assignment. So this guy is being detained for that period of time. Systems shouldn't be like that. Law enforcement should know what law enforcement's doing. And see how it came back to class? Imagine that. It's amazing. You can't get away from it. So anyway, but yeah, at the end of the day, you would think these systems would be able to talk, but they don't always talk. And they don't always talk between individual businesses, like inside of a business, like various departments in a business and stuff. They don't talk there. And that is something that we keep pushing towards. We want to integrate systems. We want to consolidate systems. I think I told you guys, that meeting I went to, they were actually looking at, well, they're not looking at, they actually created an application that takes a lot of automotive systems, combines them into a single unit so they can see what all of their businesses are doing no matter what system they're running. Well, why don't we have that for the police? And I'll get to the actual chapters in a second, but there's always something new that you think about with technology, and when you think about it, you have to start talking about it and identify it. Years ago, my friend was in medical school. He came back. He went to medical school in India, which was quite interesting, the stories he has to tell. He came back here, did his residency, and as a resident, I remember that he had to do like phone dictation of records and stuff. So he would literally be sitting there dictating records through his phone. And while he was in his residency, they started switching to computer-based. So they went from written to phone to computer, and then they started tying things together to a point where, quite literally, this is what interests me. Quite interestingly enough, I'll show you something. I'm not going to show you any records or anything. But the D in the center is my chart for me. I can find out everything that's been tested on me through Mid-Michigan Health for pretty far back, as long as they've been using the system, and they keep adding records to update it further. But the E here is my son. I can see everything that he's had and what he's got planned and his appointments and everything else. A system like that actually has a lot of value in the medical industry. I actually went to a doctor that was actually part of Mid-Michigan Health. I don't know how this happened, but I went to this doctor's office, and I don't remember what he was for. I don't remember what it was. I can't remember why I went to him. But anyway, I went there. Well, I know why I went there. I had some weird tests and test results, so I went there, and he didn't have access to the test results. And I'm like, aren't you in the same system? He says, no. So I pulled up my app, and I showed him my test results. And he's just like, maybe I need to get on that system. Well, the thing is it saved him time, it saved him energy. What's really cool is no matter where I go, I have a record somewhere that can be easily gotten to. My father went on vacation to Wisconsin, which, who vacations Wisconsin, I have no clue. He did, with my mother. And while they were there, he collapsed, fell to the ground, ended up in the hospital, ended up having an emergency surgery to get a pacemaker put in, blah, blah, blah. They had no clue what his medical history was because they had no connectivity between the original hospitals and that. So when he came back, he had to actually have his records physically transferred and everything else. And it's like, we're past that age, right? We're past that age of physical records having to be transferred. You have to be willing to invest money, but you don't want to waste money. You know, management information systems, one of those things, and I keep saying, you know, just because something exists doesn't mean you should use it or have to use it, right? There's a reason for everything, and you have to figure it out, and if it's going to suit the needs, then you use it. If it doesn't, then you don't, right? You don't just willy-nilly spend money because, well, I've got $1 million budget. If I don't use it, they're going to take it away. Well, the goal is not to use it, you know, to a certain extent. If you don't touch it at all, you're right. They're going to cut your budget the next year. You didn't use it, right? But use it within reason. Don't just say, well, yeah, because they gave me this much, I have to use every dime.
Especially for nonprofits and stuff.
Yeah, especially nonprofits and stuff like that, right? But profit-wise, it's important for every business to actually recognize that and say, hey, you know, maybe there's some type of incentive not to go up to your budget or over your budget, you know. I found out last year I went 8% over my budget. And I'm like, how'd I do that? I didn't spend any money. Because I have a departmental budget.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sitting there like, well, how on earth did I do that? So I start looking at the records, and I'm like, no one told me that my benefits are coming out of my budget. No one told me that my insurance benefits are coming out of my budget.
Oh.
So when I budgeted, I didn't include that stuff. So it's like, oh, wait, I guess I didn't have enough money to even cover, like if I teach above 4 classes, if I teach an extra class, that's an overload, and I get paid different for that. Well, that overload comes out of my budget. I'm sitting there like, wait, how's this work, right? They should be able to tell me and figure out exactly what's going on. And we don't always have that type of communication. There should be a way for me to see this stuff, and there was, but no one showed me. Now I'm more cognizant, and now I'm like, well, how do I have this coming out? This doesn't even belong to me, and I'm like, and also we had a huge grant from Dow that paid for a lot of technology and stuff, and they stuck some of that on my budget by accident, so I'm probably under budget, but what do I know? I just asked my boss, I'm like, am I going to be called to the carpet on this? But the idea is that these systems give us a way of seeing this, right? But there's still human error. No matter what we integrate into a system, no matter what we do, I guarantee you that you cannot get rid of human error. So your best bet is to train people properly and to hold people accountable. especially while using this technology. You spent a boatload of money adopting SAP, for instance. You know, millions of dollars potentially, billions if you're the government, because they don't know how to do anything. Okay. If you spent billions of dollars and it's up and running, you better make sure people are using it to its fullest capabilities. So I go back to, you're not going to train well, actually, if I have you trained, if I'm not going to pay the original company to train everybody, I want you to train everybody, because I want everyone to have that same background, right? Instead of you training him and then you training him and getting all those bad habits intermingled, etc., which we've talked about that. But this keyboard is always weird. This keyboard is always weird. So, as you can see, no matter what we talk about, we can go on a rant about our shocks and our struts. You know how that relates to this class? I think I told you at one point, I don't know if I told you guys, but I had a old, by the way, anyone drive Subarus? No one in the cult? Fine, whatever. Once you own a Subaru, it's one of those things that's almost like a Jeep. Once you own it and you've had one, you miss it when you no longer have it, right? So I had this Subaru that I absolutely loved. I mean, I could run that thing into a snowbank and it would just keep going and going and going, and I'm just like, this is awesome. And I never got stuck. And I was like, cool. Then I blew the head gasket on it and realized how much it cost to fix it, and it cost more than the car was worth, so I scrapped it. And then I was like, God, am I ever going to get another Subaru? The only reason I won't is because their bodies dent really easily. But let's take this back to our class. That takes us back to this class. One second. I need to answer this question. My wife never texts me, but I'll explain in a second. My wife just said I have to borrow the gas can for my work. Is it just regular gas? Because you can have mix for weed whips and stuff like that. So I had to say yes. I don't want her to take the. Oh shoot! I have more than one can. I better say that. In the big can, not the small, because I have a small can. Problem is if you take a 2-cycle gas and you throw that in a regular lawnmower or something, it might run, but it's going to gum it up and create all kinds of problems and blow all kinds of smoke and upset the Greenpeace people. Before that happened, I was talking about how the story about the Subaru actually came to play. I have a habit of buying used cars. I don't like buying new cars. You lose too much off the lot. I don't want to lose that. You can lose that for me, and I'll buy it when you turn it in.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Well, see? So you don't buy new cars.
Yeah.
Good idea. You're better off leasing than buying a new car if you can, because at least you don't eat that whole cost. You eat some of it, but not all of it. So at the end of the day, I bought this Subaru off of a friend. Transferred the title and everything. I didn't go through a dealership or anything, and about a month later I got a letter in the mail from a Subaru dealer telling me that I have a recall on my Subaru. How in the heck did they know me? The DMV system must work with dealerships in that to identify recalls, especially safety recalls. That's a system at work. I bought some gelato because I like gelato, it's good stuff. And I also bought their sorbet, the Tagliente sorbet. It's just awesome, okay? You gotta have that. But I received an email from, or a text message, either one, maybe it was both, from Kroger in Saginaw saying, hey, you just bought this product and there was a potential contamination with dairy, so if you're lactose intolerant, please return it. How do they know? Okay? When you manufacture something, everything that you manufacture, including this, somewhere on this bottle, there is a code of some sort, probably about right here, that tells, like that code itself tells them when this was made, what line it was made on. They can even track it all the way down to who made it, like who was working during that shift. By the way, that saved people's lives, especially when Tylenol had an issue. There was a recall on Tylenol because someone poisoned Tylenol, and they did it on purpose. And that was a long time ago, but it may have happened since then too, but with other products. But yeah, that number tells us a heck of a lot. You know, and the batch number and everything else, that's what helps, right? The VIN number on that computer. If you're in SAP, we started talking about relational databases, and that systems, most of them are based off of a relational database. That VIN number, your license number, your social security number, those are unique identifiers of you that I can use to connect your data all over the world, right? You don't want to use social security number because that's such a big issue that if you use that as an identifier, that's just a very bad thing because it's easy to get someone's identification, like identifier, but yeah, you don't want to do that. Yeah, interesting nonetheless how systems work out to do that for us. And that's why you can also, the problem with buying a new car or a used car sometimes is that people aren't very forthright about what they've done to the car. And I bought a vehicle, an Aztec. That's another one of those like cult vehicles that if you've had one, you realize how cool they actually were, but you also realize how big of a problem they were. They had all kinds of problems, worst engine that you could get in them. The other issue is they were a heavy vehicle and they used all the parts from like S10 pickups and that to build them. So all they were basically built on the Montana minivan chassis. So all of your struts and shocks and that would go bad all the time. Your wheel bearings would go bad all the time because they weren't made to handle the weight of the vehicle. See, but it was a cool vehicle, and what do we use to actually check out used vehicles? Can someone tell me a system that we use? Carfax. I looked on Carfax. Nothing popped up. I'm like, oh, sweet. It's never been in an accident. Then I found out it's been in an accident. It was in a rollover accident. The reason I know it was in a rollover accident was I found the damage when I had to find something else. I'm like, oh, what's broken glass doing under the carpet? So, systems don't catch everything because human interaction. Yes?
Wait, did you just should have asked them why there was glass on the floor, or did you go back in the system and find it?
No, the system didn't have anything about it. They fixed it themselves because they didn't want to report it to the insurance company because they didn't want it to have a salvage title, for instance. So, yeah, you got to be careful when you buy vehicles. You know, the vehicle I have now, I did a Carfax on it, and I found out, oh yeah, okay, that vehicle's fine. You know, because it showed, yeah, it was in an accident, but it was within a year of it being made, and it actually showed that it was repaired and everything else, and where it was repaired and all that stuff. So I'm like, hey, I kind of trust that vehicle, right? you also recognize that it was part of a fleet of rentals. And it's like, oh, okay. You know they don't put a lot of miles on it, but if it's a rental, people abuse them. So is there a problem there? And so on. But needless to say, it's a very interesting thing when you start talking about life and how everything's interconnected, and how these systems tie together and make our lives better, et cetera, and save lives and all of that, right? It's funny because I'll actually, my friend being a doctor, I've actually called him and said, hey, can you look up my record for me and tell me what this means? And he'll do it. I don't know if that's violating any type of laws or rules, but who cares? I don't think so. I'm giving him permission. So anyway, by the way, the ham radio stuff and actually does tie into social issues, right? Getting people to maintain old technology is difficult. I talked about the COBOL thing, COBOL programming, right? And getting people to keep doing that is very difficult. But if people quit doing it, it is extremely costly. It leads to major problems. So, it took us there. Anyway, we also started talking about IT infrastructure. Believe it or not, we are actually on track. Because we did. We started talking about IT infrastructure. Because we started talking about various ways that we transfer data. Right? You have networks and all this good stuff. You have star networks. You have token ring adapters, all this stuff. I'm going to give you the spiel of a lifetime right now. Because I'm recording this, I don't want to write on the board a lot. Because if I do, people can't see it. Token ring network. Has anyone ever played a game in a class where it's like, here, you can talk because you have the marker. When you're done talking, pass that marker to someone else so they can talk.
All right.
You ever do that?
In groups.
Not normally.
What's that?
Like if we have like a track group and we're getting to know each other.
Yeah. Okay, so you pass the baton and different things like that, And it's just like running, right? You pass the baton. You better not be running if you don't have the baton in your hand. You might disqualify your team or something. Who knows, right? But the idea is that with token ring adapter, there's a token, and that token dictates who's talking at any given point. And this is where technology was years ago when I worked in retail selling computers, and Sears actually operated on a token ring system. The difference is that you had a mainframe somewhere. Oh, actually, this has multiple mainframes, but we'll talk about something a little differently. Let's say this was a mainframe computer over here, and this was your network. There has to be a line that goes over to the mainframe still. But what happens is you can only support so much traffic, and traffic can only go one direction. Okay? So here you see that traffic is going in a counterclockwise fashion, right? You follow the arrows. And the server, the mainframe, which had all the power, that's weird when it does that. I hate when it does that. There, get that out of the way. That's what had all your applications. That's where all your data was stored and everything else. Well, for me to be able to talk to that, the server, the mainframe, would actually hand out a token. So we'll just pretend it's a gold coin. So this first computer right here, B above the B there, that would get the token because it's the first one in the chain. And if it didn't have any data to send forward, it would just pass the token on. If it had data, it would attach data to that token. That token would have to go all the way through all these computers, skipping all of them, send the data back to the mainframe. Okay? So then it comes back around. The token comes back here. Does he have data? If he does, we gotta send it all the way back. If not, he passes it on to the next one, or she, right? So now on the next one, does she have data? If she has data, it has to be taken directly. It gets attached to the token, etc. Okay? Very slow. So slow, in fact, that at Christmas time, when you're really busy, if I'm trying to sell a computer and you're trying to sell a blouse, I don't know. I don't even think we call them blouses anymore, do we? They're just shirts. Okay. Blouse came up. My mom calls them blouses. If you're trying to sell a shirt and I'm trying to sell a computer, I put my information in, I hit enter, and I could sit there at times up to 5 minutes waiting for that computer to catch up because so many people were passing data that I just couldn't get my data attached to that token. See what I'm saying? That's a very, very inefficient type of network. But that's what we had. That's what worked. Okay? We ended up changing to that word, network, it doesn't matter. We ended up changing to a star. And what a star does, I'm looking for a good representation. Well, okay, I'll just use this one right here for the heck of it. Okay, what a star does is it has a central location where every computer hooks directly to. So I'm not going through other computers. I'm not going through other devices. I literally have a direct connection with the mainframe, for instance. Okay? So now all of a sudden, whatever I do can go straight here, whatever they do can go straight there. Right? Better. Faster. I do not want my wife to blow up. Should be like, hey, did you say why wouldn't I want my wife to blow up? She doesn't have insurance like I do. I don't know why. But anyway, what happens is everyone has access to the mainframe. Mainframe has a lot more power. It still stores all the data, but whatever. Okay? Then you know how we talk about the World Wide Web, the Internet of Things, all that good stuff? This is what we ended up creating out of this. Okay? Let's actually take, I'm looking for a very easy diagram to follow. Not that one necessarily. We'll go with this one for now. Okay? And what happens here is everything can talk to everything, but everything has an ultimate goal of making it to that center person or center device. Okay? For me to get there, if I am, I got to remember it, because if I am this spot right here, for me to get to that person or that device, I have multiple hops or multiple patterns I can follow. Because with a star network, if any one of those lines is broken, I can't communicate, right? If my line happens to be broken directly to that device, I can't communicate with it. However, here, I have the ability to go from here to this IP address, to this IP address, to this IP address, to this. Or I can go from here to this IP address, to this IP address, to this IP address, to this IP address, to this. There are multiple paths to get everywhere. From anywhere to everywhere. Some of them might be slower than others, but if it's the only available path, it will take it. I lived about maybe 7 miles from Saginaw Valley when I went to Saginaw Valley years ago. Yes, I went to a competitor. What can I say? You know, I didn't say I enjoyed it. I just said I went to it. But from my house, which would have been at point A to point B, a direct line of 7 miles. Oh man, that should be quick. That should be pretty direct, right? I traced the route for connecting to that. They had a piece of software back in the day that you could download, and I think they still do, that you can ping an address and it shows you every computer that you hit to get to, every IP address, every device that you hit to get to the location that you were trying to get to. So Saginaw Valley's website, for instance. And it literally took me all the way through Chicago. Weird, huh? But that's the World Wide Web. That's the Internet of Things. That's how we get connected to everything, right? That's our infrastructure, just like our roadways. You know, if you don't have a direct path to somewhere, how many paths are there? You can always find your way. Has anyone ever tried getting somewhere using nothing but right turns? Oh, yes, it does. You have to go a lot farther, but you can get wherever you want to go doing nothing but right turns. Trust me, I hate left-hand turns. I will do left-hand turns, but I hate them. I will literally go a block further, come around, or not come that way. I'd go a block further, come around, take another right, just to turn right. I hate left-hand turns. I don't know why. It's a phobia. There's probably a real phobia for that. I do not like them. It drives my wife nuts. She goes, "Why can't you just go that way?" I don't like turning there. You don't like it, you drive.
That'd make me very mad.
But hey, you know, at the end of the day, there is a route to get everywhere from everywhere.
Do you care?
So,
Do you care if people take a left turn with you in the car?
No, I just don't like taking them. Yeah, I'm weird. What can I say? If you haven't figured that out yet, that's not my problem. So, anyway, yeah, 7 mile direct line took me all the way through Chicago to get to Saginaw Valley's website. And it had to do with major hubs, okay? Because what you see on the screen, these are devices and that connecting, but if these were computers, you have major hub points where everything goes to be routed at some point or another. And that's why, because if it can get to the Detroit hub and be sent forward, that's fine. If it can't get there, it's going to take the next possible route through a major hub and go over. The only way you got direct access between my computer and your computer is if I call via modem or have a straight patch cable. All right. Otherwise, you're doing something like this. And this is a web. I always looked at a star pattern. Kind of the same thing. You can get that same type of connectivity in an organization because you can actually set it up where it is a web, and however you determine that you're going to lay stuff out, that's what's going to happen. So I could technically go from here to here. I could technically go from you know, if there's a device there, if there's something there, I could go like that. But your network in your employment or in your employer or whatever, your business network could be that same way where you have multiple paths to get there, which definitely speeds up data transfer and allows you to handle a lot more data in a more efficient manner. Okay, so infrastructure is everything to do with what we do, because we're looking to integrate technology, and integrating technology these days is all about infrastructure. You know, how many of us have wireless printers? I have a wireless printer. How many of us just never answer questions? Y'all killing me. Do you realize I came here with a migraine today just so I could teach you guys? And I'm not being sarcastic. Why do you think I have caffeine? Caffeine.
I feel like that would make a migraine a lot worse.
Yeah,
No.
I feel like you might be prioritizing the wrong thing.
No.
Maybe like a water.
Look at what's in like Tylenol or Excedrin migraine. It's caffeine,
Oh, yeah, that is
aspirin, and Tylenol or
Yeah.
something, basically. Yeah. So, yeah, I know what I'm doing. It's not my first time at the rodeo, man. Not my first time at the rodeo. You have to eat something greasy like the burrito I had this morning. That helps.
Right out of the microwave?
Hmm?
Right out of the microwave?
No, my wife was really kind because I had to go for a medical test, and she was so kind that she went to a place called Green Tree in Mount Pleasant, and they have these sausage, egg, and potato burritos that are just out of this world. And you walk in, they're all pre-made, and you just grab one. They're already hot. Whew, it's a tasty treat. Yeah, it's like $6, but
Oh my god.
but
That'd
it's,
be a big burrito.
well, you gotta remember, it's Green Tree, it's all natural.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
That'd be good though.
Tastes natural though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's got that funky, natural flavor, like taste sometimes.
Okay.
You know how you get that organic stuff and then like organic tortillas and stuff, and it just has that little funky flavor because it's actually normal, and we're not used to normal. Yeah. I would much rather have a tortilla with just lard, salt, flour, mixed together, cooked on a griddle like I did when I was a kid.
It's because that's what you're used to.
Yeah. To me, that's the most natural. I mean, you're using lard, which is just fat, right? Nothing's done to it. You're using flour. If you use unbleached flour, hey, nothing's done to it. And salt. A little bit of water. That's more natural than whatever they made, I think, but what do I know? It also clogs your arteries, but who cares?
What's wrong with that?
I don't know. I haven't figured that out.
Can't be the worst way to die.
This is where we start getting into, and I alluded to it in another lecture, I'm pretty sure, but the concept of software as a service, infrastructure as a service. So you can have cloud infrastructure instead of having to have your infrastructure on premises. You basically have terminals that talk to the internet, right? So your infrastructure for a small business quite often is your Square machine or your Clover machine and an internet connection, right? Because everything else is taken care of out in the cloud by a service provider. So software as a service, system as a service, stuff like that. I always got confused because, and I got to mention this to you guys because it is actually important. There's something, you have software as a service, but you also have SAS, which is statistical analysis software. Don't ever confuse that. I was in a meeting one time and someone started talking about SAS and I sounded like an idiot. Because I'm like, yeah, software as a service, because where's my brain go? My brain, when I hear SAS, I'm thinking this, because this is the field I work in. They were talking about something totally different. And yes, I look like a bigger idiot than normal. See? By the way, if you can insult yourself, no one else can ever insult you. Right? Because it's not an insult. Just like, yeah, you're pointing out something I would point out about myself. See? So, anyway, yeah. With all this technology, you would think that these businesses were just flourishing and couldn't do any better. He's out. He's like, I'm done.
He fell to the ground.
Did you get an email from them?
Yeah,
I got-
did.
Did they say anything?
Yeah, I haven't read them yet.
Okay. They didn't say anything. You have to read it. Yeah.
Ha.
I love that. You like, write on the board, what's this say? It doesn't say anything. You have to read it. Anyway, infrastructure doesn't have to be a hard concept. You just have to understand how things talk to one another. You know, you have to understand the IP address. I think we showed you the IPv4 versus IPv6, the fact that there is literally an address for pretty much every molecule on the planet. That is awesome. I think I proved science wrong.
Oh, wait. Relax.
Check this out.
Relax.
Okay. This is just the way my mind works. I can stop recording. If you're interested in this, listen. If you're not, you can split. But